Matthew Slattery will turn 13 on Thanksgiving. His youthful exuberance, caught on this video just months ago, is now at the very best held captive behind these frustrated eyes.
The cheek is bending.
It was August 16th. Matthew, his older brother Peter, and his mother Susan were driving back from a family reunion in Cleveland when a semi-truck slammed into the back of their car as they slowed for traffic. Susan, a well-known professor at Stevenson University, was killed almost instantly. Peter was badly injured but stable. Matthew's doctors say he lost 80% of his blood and suffered a traumatic brain injury.
Good job, buddy. See how long you can hold it. Hold it, hold it.
Excellent. Nice.
The pain may be just as evident in his father's eyes. Ed Slattery couldn't go on that trip to Ohio, yet his life was transported to a place he will never escape.
So you prioritize. You get the best information you can, and you make the decision, and then you live with it.
You're doing a lot of living with it.
An awful lot of settling for. You settle for. And what I'm settling for stinks.
While Ed's older son is walking again and back at school, his wife, his children's mother, is dead. Matthew, a ghost of what a 12-year-old should be.
Yes. Okay, hold your head. No, hold it up.
Matthew's accomplishments are limited to a slight nod or holding his head up.
Hi.
An epic battle between mind and body is waging in this child, blissfully unaware of what happened. Yet his father is fighting his own war on reality, grief, and at times desperation.
There's no compensation. There's no amount of grace on this planet that can compensate for losing my wife and more importantly, my children losing their mother. So I try to hold on to the graces, I try to recognize the graces, but I also know they're not enough.
Because none of it had to happen. The trucker who barreled into the Slattery family admitted to police he fell asleep at the wheel. While final reports are still pending, investigators found the trucker was still within the limits of drive time allowed by federal law. But it is that standard, experts say, kills 12 to 14 people a day.
These are rolling time bombs. Every time you see a truck on the highway, you have no idea whether a trucker's been driving for 5 hours or 15 hours.
Joan Claybrook is the former head of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and a well-known advocate for reducing the hours truckers can drive. Currently, the regulations dictate truckers can drive no longer than 11 hours with 10 hours off. But those regulations can change as early as next year. After several successful lawsuits by safety groups, the federal government is currently looking at how many hours a trucker can drive in any one given shift. That proposal could be made public any day now, and it could be the new standard in the industry no later than next July. According to a study by the National Transportation Safety Board, upwards of 40% of truck fatalities are caused by fatigue. 5,000 Americans die each year. Claybrook's group doesn't blame the drivers themselves, but the pay-by-the-mile structure, she says, encourages going faster and driving longer.
These are sweatshops rolling down the highway because the truck drivers don't have the control that they should, they don't get paid what they should, and so they work extra long hours and they exhaust themselves. And we're the people who are the victims.
The American Truckers Association disagrees, saying the current driving regulations work for the most part and have resulted in a 20% decrease in fatal truck crashes last year. The group also contends reducing drive time hours will cost Americans more for their goods.
Go, 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 go.
Good job, honey.
But the cost to Ed's family is quite literally more than he can bear.
Big sigh.
Big sigh.
Yeah. That's a small price to pay because the price I'm paying, the cost of having cheaper goods, I'm bearing that whole cost.
with literally a life and his child's innocence. In Baltimore, Brian Kuebler,
Come back to Daddy.
ABC 2 News investigators. The road back often starts where it once ended. The gentle shores along Lake Erie is near where life halted for the Slatterys, and where a year later it begins once again. Making it better is exactly what this family is trying to do. Ed Slattery took his boys back to Ohio, back to the family picnic that preceded their hell. The last real moment before the surreal. Before a trucker fell asleep at the wheel on an Ohio interstate, before his wife's death, before his son's injuries. Exactly a year later now, back to where life as they once knew it ended.
You know, I didn't want the year commemoration to be sad. Although there's plenty of that, there's also an awful lot to celebrate.
Matthew, for one, is talking again, if not so much with his own words, his eyes now clearly mapping out that buoyant personality. Incredible progress his father wanted desperately for those who saved his life to see.
This is Matthew.
Hi, Matthew.
Do you remember Matthew?
These firefighters in Streetsboro, Ohio can hardly forget watching Matthew walk again, almost as unbelievable of a sight. These men were the first responders a year ago, the ones Ed credits for saving his son's lives. And even though he wasn't in that car, perhaps his own as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The hug might be more powerful than the $10,000 donation Ed made to that fire department. The Slatterys won their settlement against the trucking company. It's enough to care for Matthew for the rest of his life. Enough for the Slatterys to give back.
Thank you.
Including another $100,000 to the Akron Children's Hospital. A donation met with the pomp and circumstance of a press conference for the local media, perhaps as much of a show of appreciation to the hospital as it is of his own boys.
Most importantly, it is a celebration of our boys, Peter and Matthew. Mommy and I love you more than you'll ever know. And any parent knows what that feels like. Your mom shines through you every minute of every day. I see her in your smile. I see you in her determination. Your mother worked harder than anybody I've ever known.
And it's in that spirit this fractured family works to heal, without their mother, but through each other.
He looks at you.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I feel this stare an awful lot. And I think we just look in each other's eyes and we just love each other. Is that right?
I know.
I know you know.
As the sun sets on this sad year, it is indeed getting better. In Lorain, Ohio, Brian Kuebler, ABC 2 News. It was in a subcommittee on Capitol Hill where the Slattery family's emotional reality clashed with the political, where the economics of tears may have failed to resonate as loudly as the dollar.
If this is what a congressional hearing is like, then I understand why communism has a higher approval rating than Congress.
Those are the words of a man who has a story to tell but failed to get the right audience. Ed Slattery and his son Matthew were hoping to testify in this subcommittee on regulatory affairs, a hearing to debate the cost of implementing a new Department of Transportation rule that would decrease drive time for truckers while increasing their rest. House rules dictate the majority party, in this case the Republicans, choose most of who speaks in these hearings. 5 witnesses from trucking companies testified versus just one safety expert. While Slattery's statement was read into the record, he was not chosen to speak.
The whole hearing was a farce. And if the American people knew what these hearings were, I think they'd be even more sickened than they are now.
Those words were spoken to us, but Slattery says they were aimed at subcommittee chair and Ohio Republican Congressman Jim Jordan. A conversation Slattery invited us to witness in the halls of Congress, but one Jordan's staff refused us access to. Even without a mic or a seat at the table, Ed would make his point to any lawmaker he saw exiting the hearing.
But that's a farce. The rules of the House need to be changed. It's nuts that he would have all those people for the trucking interests lined up and only one safety advocate. Mr. Jordan knew what he believed when he walked in there, and everybody simply parroted what he wanted to hear.
Democratic Congressman from Ohio, Dennis Kucinich, heard Slattery loud and clear, and through the lawmaker from his wife's district, found a sympathetic voice.
The important thing about Congress to remember is that even if you walk into a situation where the deck is stacked against you, if you can still get your point across, that's huge.
Now there is the other side of this story, albeit not nearly as emotional. The trucking industry says these new regulations could cost trucking companies upwards of $2 billion, a cost inevitably they will pass on to you, the consumer.
It means greater cost for cereal, greater cost for gasoline at the pump, clothing, anything that you and I buy at the store.
David Osheki is with the American Trucking Associations and says the cost of decreasing drive time outweighs the benefit. Fatigue alone causes a very small percentage of deadly accidents on American roadways, he says, and Congress should broaden its scope as to why 3,000 to 4,000 Americans die from truck crashes each year.
It's misbehaviors and mistakes. Misbehaviors meaning speeding and following, and unsafe actions that some people choose to make.
Right now, they are working too many hours and driving too many hours.
Safety advocates feel no matter mistake or fatigue, the rule must change, even at the cost of $2 billion.
We're trying to create a rule that will result in more rested truck drivers and bringing down the number of deaths and injuries that are occurring because we have tired truckers on the road.
A message Ed Slattery and his family are now slowly becoming the face of, fighting through what they call the partisan farce of the congressional hearing process to be heard, to express that dollars are simply not worth more than tears.
There are 330 million of us who can share that cost. As it stands right now, 3,000 families a year lose a family member, and those 3,000 families bear the whole cost.
Numbers Slattery hopes causes Capitol Hill pause as Congress debates the cost of lives versus doing business. In Washington, Brian Kuebler, ABC 2 News.
What kind of fish? Do you remember? Holy
Crap.
no!
Normal, of course, is a relative term, but getting back to one's definition of it is often a journey to an entirely unexpected destination. It was 2 summers ago when Ed Slattery lost his wife Susan to a tired trucker and, to a large extent, his teenage son, as he was, only to fall in love all over again with who he is.
Why?
I love you.
It's a father-son bond as strong as this tragedy is sad. This family has been tirelessly rebuilding their lives with the few pieces left on that Ohio interstate in August of 2010. But it is on this empty lot in Cockeysville where the Slatterys can finally put some of it back together.
We're excited because within the next 2 weeks they'll be out here pouring cement, and after that things will start moving pretty quickly.
It could take up to a year to build the Slattery's new home, a modern, environmentally efficient, and most importantly, accessible house for the Slatterys of today and the rest of Matthew's life. By the 3D model and artist renderings, you can see there is an open floor plan or universal concept to accommodate the wheelchair. Walls, Ed says, are the enemy. There will be special cooktops, pull-down cabinets, and even a therapy pool, designed and tailored from the ground up for wheels down.
That was the #1 goal from the outset. And so we embrace that wholeheartedly.
Adam Bridge and his partners at Baltimore architecture firm Alter Urban have been designing this home for 9 months.
That's that kind of flush transition, so the wheelchair rolls over it.
A house to become the Slattery family's new home.
And the concept for this house was finding a new normal. And that was both a new normal for Matthew. So how can we create a place that isn't normal for regular residents, but will be normal, and so it allows Matthew and Ed and Peter and the family to kind of resume a life of normality.
And their new version of it. But this house is not without a nod to the past. The cement wall along the backside of the house will be a memorial to Susan Slattery. The structure designed as a tasteful tribute to life as it was, is, and will be.
We just take this really seriously because we want it to be right. We want them to move in and it to work functionally, but to feel right, and to give them a new home so that they can launch in the new life.
You're a good guy, buddy.
A new life caused by the truck that hit the family's car and made possible by the settlement with that company. The same money the Slatterys continue to give away. We profiled last year how they gave to the firehouse that responded to the accident in Ohio, the Akron Children's Hospital that helped save Matthew's life, and now $1 million over 10 years to Kennedy Krieger right here at home. All of it meant to help families in a similar situation whose insurance falls short. The Slatterys knowing they were fortunate enough to barely escape an all too common reality.
He and Peter and I will be okay for the rest of our lives, and that's the idea of lawsuits, is that you make people as whole as you can. And of course money never fixes things, but it certainly does help.
Helping the Slatterys move on while helping others in 2 different states begin to do the same. The Slattery's house should take shape in the next couple of weeks and be completed by this time next year. Brian Kuebler, ABC 2 News.